It's pretty much a done deal that after all the madness of Secret Wars and Doomsday, the MCU is gearing up for a fresh start in Phase 7, and that could mean the beginning of a full-blown mutant saga. Kevin Feige recently spoke with Variety, and while he kept things vague, he did confirm that the MCU has been dropping hints about mutants for a while now. One of the most talked about projects fans are buzzing about? A potential Colossus solo film after Secret Wars and Doomsday. If the MCU goes all in on his story, I'd love to see them adapt his introduction in Giant Size X-Men #1 by Len Wein and Dave Cockrum, where he joins a new generation of X-Men. So, what's the latest? Here's everything we know so far. For those not caught up on the MCU's mutant plans, here's a quick rundown. In Avengers Secret Wars, we're expecting to see a lot more mutants than in movies like Deadpool and Wolverine. Following the chaos of Secret Wars and Doomsday, the MCU is setting the stage for a soft reboot with Phase 7, which might just launch an entirely new mutant saga. Kevin Feige recently hinted in an interview with Variety that mutant clues have been sprinkled throughout the universe for a while now. Characters like Ms. Marvel, who discovered her powers are due to a mutation, along with Namor, Professor X, despite his tragic end at the hands of Scarlet Witch, and Beast, currently off in another reality, have all laid the groundwork. With the upcoming X-Men movie gaining momentum, fans are in for a wild ride that blends Colossus's deep personal struggles with some truly epic mutant adventures. One of the key storylines I'd love to see the MCU explore for Colossus's solo debut in the mutant saga comes straight out of Giant Size X-Men #1. In that classic issue, we get an early glimpse of Piotr's internal struggle. Despite his deep roots as a simple farmer who cherishes a quiet life with his family back home, he's constantly pulled into situations where he must use his incredible powers to help others. This conflict is established in one of his very first heroic acts, when his little sister Illyana is caught in the path of a runaway tractor. In a heartbeat, Piotr transforms his body into organic steel to block the tractor, even though he knows this selfless act might leave his neighbors struggling to afford a replacement. It's a moment that perfectly sums up the heart of Colossus, a guy caught between duty and the life he's always dreamed of. Later, when Professor Charles Xavier comes calling to recruit him for the X-Men, Piotr finds himself even more torn. On one hand, he wants nothing more than to remain with his family in his homeland. On the other, he feels a deep responsibility to use his powers for the greater good. This bittersweet choice haunts him throughout his life, as he becomes one of the X-Men's most essential and beloved members. His journey is all about making tough sacrifices, leaving behind the simplicity of his past for a life filled with conflict, loss, and the constant fight for mutant rights. And with the MCU now gearing up to introduce mutants into their universe, there couldn't be a better time to dig into these personal and emotional battles. If the MCU wants to give Colossus a truly compelling solo project, they have plenty of brutal and emotionally heavy comic storylines to pull from. While Colossus is often seen as the X-Men's strong yet kind-hearted powerhouse, his origins and life have been anything but easy. If Marvel wants to highlight the depth of his character, they could pull inspiration from several comics that explore the darker and more intense parts of his story. One of the best comics to explore Colossus's early life is X-Men Origins Colossus by Chris Yost. This issue delves into the hardships Pyotr Nikolaevich Rasputin faced growing up in Soviet-controlled Siberia. Life on the Ust-Ordinsky collective farm was harsh, and his family constantly struggled to make ends meet. But things took an even darker turn when Soviet officials discovered Pyotr's mutant abilities. In this story, the government sees his transformation into organic steel as a potential military asset. They attempt to take him away, and Pyotr is forced to fight to protect his family. This version of his origin is much grittier and would fit well in the MCU if they want to explore the oppression mutants faced in different parts of the world. His past could serve as a powerful contrast to the larger battle for mutant rights in the present timeline. Another brutal storyline that could be adapted for Colossus in the MCU is X-Men Deadly Genesis by Ed Brubaker. This arc rewrites X-Men history, revealing that before the giant-size X-Men team, which included Colossus, Storm, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler, was recruited, Charles Xavier secretly put together another group of mutants to rescue the original X-Men from Krakoa. However, that team was completely wiped out, and Xavier erased the memory of their existence from everyone's minds. This revelation shakes Colossus and his teammates to their core, making them question whether they can truly trust Xavier. If the MCU adapts this storyline, it could add another layer of conflict to Colossus's character, turning him from a devoted follower of Xavier's dream into someone deeply skeptical of leadership and authority. One of the most gut-wrenching storylines in Colossus's life involves his younger sister, Illyana Rasputin, who later becomes the powerful sorceress Magik. In Magik, Storm and Illyana 1983-84 by Chris Claremont, Illyana is kidnapped as a child and taken to the demonic dimension of Limbo. She spends years trapped there, battling dark forces before returning to the real world as a battle-hardened warrior with powerful mystical abilities. The tragic part? Though only minutes passed in the real world, Illyana lived in Limbo for years, experiencing unimaginable horrors. Colossus is devastated by what happened to his sister and blames himself for not being able to protect her. If the MCU wanted to show Colossus's emotional depth, they could incorporate this storyline, exploring his protective nature and the guilt he carries over what happened to Illyana. This could also tie into the larger MCU if they wanted to introduce Limbo as a supernatural battleground. If they really wanted to push Colossus into darker territory, the MCU could adapt Uncanny X-Men number 303 by Scott Lobdell, which features the heartbreaking death of Illyana. In this story, Illyana contracts the mutant-targeting legacy virus, a disease that was essentially the mutant equivalent of a plague. Despite all of the X-Men's resources and technology, there's nothing they can do to save her. She dies in Colossus's arms, leaving him utterly shattered. This moment is one of the most emotionally devastating in X-Men history. Colossus's grief over Illyana's death becomes a defining part of his character. And that wraps up today's video. If you want to stay in the loop with all the latest movies and series news, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up, because I'll be dropping more updates about which X-Men movie the MCU will kick off with soon, along with news about some of your other favorite series and movies. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.